Excellent. So we finished all of step two. We've got a very basic working game in that if we hit the play button, the rover moves and you can drive over top and pick up these items. What we want to do for the third step is to add a little bit of collision detection using the physics engine. When the rover collides with one of those three rocks, we're going to have the engine pop up a big box that says, "Hey, you failed." Um, in order to do that, we have to start by creating proxy collision objects for each of these rocks, and really anything else that you may have dragged and dropped into the scene to be part of your environment. In order to do that, if you're using the rocks, I recommend you do. We're going to make a sphere, and I'm just going to create a sphere with the Create Sphere button, and that sphere is just going to appear in the center of my view. What I want to do is I want to place it so that it kind of fits around the rock. Now you'll see here it's too small, but if I open the Properties tab, I can uncheck Visible. Then what I want to go ahead and do is look at the radius of the sphere and make it bigger. In fact, I'm going to go back and I'm going to check Visible again. So I've made the radius far too large. Let's just go a little bit lower, and I'm just going to position it using the Move, Rotate, Scale tool. Now, one of the things that's important to note about this is you don't have to do this step. You can skip all the way from 2 to wrap up if you need to. But here we go. This is good. This sphere is roughly showing the shape of the rock. So I've set up my sphere, and I'm going to go ahead and go to Flags and uncheck Visible again. So now it's invisible. I want to find the Physics side tab here and open the Physics editor. You'll note that it pops in. To avoid confusion, I'm going to go ahead and close the Properties window. So I want to check the checkbox Physics Enabled. Now it's important to note that I've got the sphere selected at this point, right? We don't want to be editing the wrong object. So make sure you've got your sphere selected. I'll click Physics Enabled. And you'll note that I get a pink, really kind of fuchsia neon highlight. That's a preview of the object as seen from the perspective of the physics engine. The physics engine naturally understands what spheres are, so that works out pretty well. Physics are enabled, and we want to make sure to set the mass to 0. That's pretty important. So I can click the down button here, all the way down to 0, or I can just grab the slider, pull it all the way to the edge. Okay, so mass is 0. Physics is enabled. That's all we need to do for a collision object. We'll see a pink outline. You'll notice if I unselect this object, I can't see it at all. It's invisible. And I don't see the pink outlines anymore either. If I want to get a complete view that's persistent, regardless of what I've got selected, of the physics world, I can go to the Rendering drop-down menu and toggle Physics Display. So this is the world from the perspective of the physics engine. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for all of my rocks. Now here's a trick. You can actually reuse this same collision sphere that we've created by going to Edit and then Duplicate. And I can click and drag and position this new object several times, right? So let me click back on this guy. And I'll go to Edit, Duplicate, and I'll pull them over here. Okay, good. So that looks great. We've got collision proxies set up for all of our objects. Now what we need to do is set up physics for our rover. So what I want to do is select the rover. And this is, I'm just past step 3K. This is important. You want to make sure you've got the rover selected. All right, so I click on the rover. I can tell that he's selected, and I'll open my physics panel again. If your physics panel was open, it'll switch to the settings for the player. Set Physics Enabled, check. The activation state to stay awake. This is important so that the physics engine doesn't suspend this object. Because we're not actually using the physics to steer it around space, we have code that responds to the keyboard that directly sets its position. The physics engine doesn't know that it's moving, and we have to signal that, hey, don't suspend this thing, I'm actually working with it. That's why we click Stay Awake. You should have a little tab here called Collision Shape. When I open that up, I'm going to be able to set what is the collision proxy for this particular object. You'll notice earlier we manually created the collision proxies. I'm going through a slightly different path here. In this case, under Collision Shape, I'm going to open the drop-down that says Collision Type and select Sphere. And you'll see a little sphere just appeared down there. I'm going to pull the collision radius slider until it fits around him nicely, and the correct number there is 2. So it's got a radius of 2, and that seems to be a pretty good fit. Okay, good. Doing good here. Finally, I want to lock the motion so that the physics engine isn't going to cause this thing to fall through the floor. I'm going to open Motion Locks and uncheck everything. Okay, so I've unchecked everything. That was 3R. And we set up a physics proxy for the player. That's all there is to it. Next, in step 4, we're going to add a little bit of code to make a pop-up happen.